everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alice and this channel is called Alice's Life. In today's video I'm going to be talking about the 14 books that I read during July 2021. It's a lot of books, more than I usually would read, but I managed to get a lot of reading done. So the first book that I read was called The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and this is a very famous book. It's been made into a film as well. So it's all about this man that loses a court case and has to go to prison for 3 months. But while he's waiting for that, he goes and works on a family's history book, and then he's also investigating the disappearance of this man's granddaughter. And whilst doing that, he meets a woman called Lisbeth, who is 150 centimetres tall and 40 kilograms in weight, and they become good friends and kind of start a relationship. I really enjoyed this psychological thriller and I would rate it 5 stars. The next book that I read this month was called Dolores by Laura Curtis. What initially attracted me to this book was the front cover of a nun. It's only 144 pages, so it was a very quick novella, a quick novel. It's all about the power of the church, and I think she was raped or has some difficult sexual past, and it's really interesting and quite good, but not one that I would go back to or necessarily recommend. The next book that I read was based in Belfast, and it's called Where Are We Now? I found this book absolutely awful, would not recommend, and it was a struggle to finish, but I just felt like I had to finish it. The front cover was nice, which is kind of what attracted me to it, and also the fact it's set in this city, but no, would not recommend. It was all about a middle-aged man, and there was no plot. All these characters drifted in and out, and nothing happened. It's just awful all around. The next book was written by Michael Greger. It's called How Not to Die. I really enjoyed this book. It's a book that I had been meaning to read for a long time, but I didn't want to purchase, so I managed to get it from the library. It's a really good resource, full of thousands of different references, really well researched, and quite heavy read, but you get into it. It takes it took me a few days to get through it because it's just so thick, but like the last 200 pages were just the references. Before returning to the library, I made about 1.5 pages of notes of things I wanted to remember. It's really good because it separates all different common illnesses and how poor diet affects your health and damages your health, and is a really good advocate for plant-based eating. The next book was written last year, and it's called We Just Clicked. It was kind of a silly romantic comedy book, all about Instagram. So the girl wants to become a famous Instagram influencer, and she meets this man that's going to help her by building up this fake relationship. It was funny, very predictable. I knew what was going to happen, but it was enjoyable for that genre. After that, I read The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. This was also a book that I'd been meaning to read, but I didn't want to purchase it at full price to read it. So I read it whilst at someone's house. It took about half an hour. On Amazon it has got 81,000 reviews, and quite shocking, but 82% of them are 5 stars. Controversially, I thought the book lacked opinion. Whilst the drawings were nice, it could be read in like half an hour, and it's like very like, oh, be nice. It wasn't like, I didn't learn anything. It was nice to read, nice to flick through, but I wouldn't like rush out and buy a book for everyone I know, like some people in the comments or reviews seem to have done. So that is controversial, but just a bit lacking. The next book I read was called The Silent Treatment. It's all about a man and his wife, and they have not spoken to each other for 6 months, and the wife then takes an overdose. Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. It was a bit of a weird sort of story and it wasn't really believable, but it kind of, towards the end of the book, it became more obvious why they suddenly started this silent treatment, and that was because they had a problematic daughter, and kind of looking at that angle. It does have some mixed reviews on Amazon and other websites, but I enjoyed it. The next book I read was also by Michael Greger, so I did manage to read 2 hefty non-fiction books this month, and it was called How to Survive a Pandemic. It was published in August 2020, so it's been published for a year, but it's only got about 500 reviews on Amazon, which I was quite surprised by, because I thought, especially with the last year, you would think it would have more reviews and more people wanting to read it. I rated this lower than the last one. I rated it at 3.5 stars. It's just a bit information heavy. It took me a while to get through, but I'm pleased I managed to complete it. And the bit's all about intensive farming and how chickens are quite often the reason for a pandemic starting in the first place, and why maybe we shouldn't be eating so many intensively farmed chickens, and their eggs was really interesting to look at that sort of side of things, and also how to prepare for the next pandemic. Like, you should have about a few months supply of food and water in your house, which isn't easy for a lot of people, but yeah, good. The next book I read was only published a few months ago, and it's called You Have to Make Your Own Fun Around Here. It's based in a rural Irish community, and there's a very plausible storyline. So there's a female friendship, and one of them goes off to university and the other one's left behind, and the other one thinks she's superior in sort of acting. Yeah, so that's a really interesting story. Or was that another book? Maybe that was another book. I'm getting confused. But it was a good book about female friendships. That's what I've written down. The next book was called The Beekeeper of Aleppo. It's all about Syrian refugees, and they are escaping war-torn Syria, and it shows their journey from Syria through various countries until they reach the relative safety of Britain. I enjoyed this book. It was good storytelling. I'm not 100% sure why the wife never spoke to the man. I found that a bit weird, but I did like this book, and it was good because often you don't see or hear about the refugees' story, so yeah. The next book that I read this month was called Living My Best Life. Awful, would not recommend, do not read unless you want to, but it was kind of like a romantic comedy looking at friendships, but it was really unbelievable. So the 5-year-old in the story was really polite, and he was not a normal person, not a normal 5-year-old, because he just knew what was going on and was super polite. Although I don't know that many 5-year-olds, but that part of the story of the 5-year-old did not seem realistic, and I don't like realistic things that aren't that realistic. So no, just like they met each other at a swimming pool, and then they started spilling the beans as to their whole life stories, which is not realistic. And then the 5-year-old kept piping up, which is not realistic. So I did not like it. Bit of a pointless story. The next book was written by Dawn French, and it's called Because of You. It starts, I think maybe like 20 years before the end of the book, but the 2 women give birth in the same hospital. One of the babies is born stillborn, so that mum steals the baby of a politician's wife. She runs out of hospital with the baby, and she convinces her partner to keep the baby. So the politician feels like his baby has been stolen, and yeah, they sort of like somehow get back together later in life, and it was a very weird ending, but I quite like the storytelling, and for that reason I rated it 4 stars. The next book that I read was written by an anonymous person in 1972, but the book I was reading said 2011, but I think it is an older book, and it's called Go Ask Alice. I was attracted to this book because it says Alice, and I always lean more towards books that have Alice in the title, because that's my name. So it's all about this teenager, and it's her diary. It's a fiction book, but it's kind of, people think it's a non-fiction, but I think it is a fiction. I was doing some research about it. Yeah, so she gets mixed up with the wrong crowd and starts abusing illegal drugs and causes problems in her home life and with her health, and she runs away. Yeah, and in the end it's quite a sad ending because she dies. So it's a good eye-opener. You can tell it was written a few decades ago, but enjoyable, easy read, very short. The next book that I read was called Mothers. It's all about a 10-year-old that goes off to dance school. She goes to an audition, but the mother and father are divorced, but they have quite a united front. And there's a big dramatic thing that happens at the dance school scholarship auditions. So it's kind of like a mystery. There were some enjoyable parts of the story, but it wasn't particularly gripping. It wasn't like a super page turner. So yeah, kind of mediocre. Okay, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any book recommendations, leave them in the comments below and I might read them. Bye!